dad hit me in front of our entire extended family when I refused to move into the basement so that my pregnant sister and her unemployed husband could take my room. He had no idea I'd been paying the mortgage and covering all the expenses for years. 3 days later, they found out what happens when the money stops coming. The hum of my computer was the only sound that still made sense. It was a clean, steady buzz, the sound of logic and order, of ones and zeros building entire worlds within a glowing screen. There, in my childhood bedroom turned home office, I was a creator, a problem solver. I was a senior software developer at 22, the kind of success story my parents liked to casually brag about to their friends. But on the other side of that door, the code got messy, the logic fell apart. On the other side of that door, I was just a stranger, the infallible auditor, the human ATM, the silent pillar holding up a house quietly collapsing in on itself. The door creaked open, and the smell of something simmering on the stove mixed with the scent of unease. It was my mother, Claudia, holding a plate with a slice of apple pie. Her smile was warm, rehearsed, the kind she wore when she was about to ask for something. "You work so hard, sweetheart," she said, setting the plate on the corner of my desk, dangerously close to a stack of technical manuals. "That's how it is, Mom," I replied, giving her a tired smile. "I've been fixing a critical bug for 6 hours, and my brain's basically scrambled eggs now." She ran her hand through my hair, a gesture from my childhood that now felt more like a warning sign. "We're so proud of you, you know that, right?" "I know, Mom." She let her hand rest on my shoulder. "Listen, sweetheart, I know it's not the best time, but I just saw the grocery receipts and prices have gone way up this month. We're about $200 short for the big shopping trip this weekend." I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes on the screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard. I knew very well she'd already done a big grocery run 3 days ago. I'd seen the bags. I also knew my dad had been talking about buying a new set of golf clubs. I said nothing about that. Just nodded, grabbed my phone from the stand, and opened the banking app. "No problem," I murmured, thumb tapping the screen. "I'll send it over." "Oh, you're a lifesaver," she sighed, her voice filled with instant, total relief. She leaned in and kissed my temple. "That's what family does. We help each other." She picked up the empty coffee mug from my desk. "I'll go get you a fresh cup." As she left, her words lingered in the air. That's what family does. It was the justification for everything. It was the reason why half the mortgage payment on this house, a house I don't even legally own, was scheduled to be auto-debited from my account each month. It was why the electric bill, the internet bill, the very lifeline of my career, and the water bill were all in my name, fully paid by me. It was why I had drained a large chunk of my savings last winter to repair the leaky roof after a storm. While I signed the check, I overheard my dad complaining that contractors were all thieves. It was why I had co-signed my mom's car loan, and when the payments got tight, I just took over them myself. I leaned back, the springs in my chair groaning in protest. I justified all of it with a dangerous, simple thought: this keeps the peace. My father was a proud man, someone who couldn't stand the thought of being seen as a failure. My mother was fragile, always worried about appearances. My contributions allowed them to maintain the facade of a comfortable, stable, middle-class life. It was my secret gift to them, one they never acknowledged, and one I never mentioned. The front door slammed shut, followed by the heavy thud of boots on hardwood. A second later, my door swung open without knocking. It was Sarah, my older sister, 25 years old and radiating the kind of undeserved confidence that only comes from never having truly faced consequences. Behind her was her husband, Mike, a thin guy with perpetually worried eyes that seemed to shrink a little more every day. Sarah leaned against the doorframe with a sarcastic smile. "Still saving the world with your computer magic," she said. "I'm more tired than I'd like to admit," I sighed. Mike had a great interview with a logistics company. He nailed it, but the manager was a jerk. Had it out for him from the start. Mike shifted awkwardly behind her, his face red with shame. It was the same story as last month, just with a different company name. Sarah had a talent for turning Mike's near successes into near tragedies, forever painting him as the victim of a world that simply refused to see his potential. Sarah and Mike had been living with us for 6 months, after losing their apartment when Mike got fired from his last job. What began as a temporary solution had become permanent, with my parents treating them like honored guests instead of adults who needed to get their act together. She looked me up and down. "Hey, little brother, can you spot me $50? Mike and I are going out tonight, we've got to celebrate the news." Sarah and Mike had been married for 8 months, and the news was that she was pregnant. I raised an eyebrow, unsure if I should panic. "Relax, it's a good thing," she said, stepping into the room, her voice a little softer. "Listen, I'll pay you back once Mike gets back on his feet." It was the oldest excuse in her book, a promise so worn and faded it had become see-through. Sarah had always been good at turning other people's problems into opportunities for me to help. But I saw the glint of desperation in her eyes, the fear behind her bravado. She was my sister. So I did what I always did, pulled out my worn leather wallet from my back pocket, took out 2 20s and 3 10s, and handed them to her. Avoiding the fight was worth the dollars. Later that night, I was on a video call with Liam, my best friend since childhood. He was the only one who knew the full extent of my financial arrangement with my family. His pixelated face on my screen was a mask of disbelief. "They're making you pay for the celebration of the baby that's only going to make their finances worse. Ethan, do you hear yourself? You're not a son, you're a branch office. You're R&D and the main revenue stream of a failing family corporation." "It's not like that," I argued, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "I'm helping. They're struggling. They've been struggling ever since you got your signing bonus," Liam snapped, his voice rising. "Your dad's shopping for new golf clubs, your mom's got a new car, Sarah's getting handouts to go out, and you're still living in the same bedroom you had when you were 15. That's not family, that's a terrible deal. When are you going to wake up and see that?" I had no answer. I just stared at my own reflection in the dark screen, a pale, tired face staring back. The wake-up call came a week later. My parents and Sarah were drunk on baby fever, buzzing with preparations. The whole house pulsed with a frantic kind of energy. At dinner, my father cleared his throat, a sound that always meant a proclamation was coming. He looked beamingly at Sarah, then at me. "You know, with the baby coming and Sarah and Mike starting this new life together, we're all going to have to make some adjustments. Big changes are ahead." He placed a heavy, possessive hand on my shoulder. "This is an exciting time, a moment when family really needs to come together." That word lodged in my gut like a stone. I looked around the table, my father's proud arrogance, my mother's emotional joy, my sister's smug satisfaction, Mike's uncomfortable fidgeting, and for the first time, I didn't feel like part of the family. I felt like a resource, something about to be mine. The family conversation came a few days later. They sat me down in the living room on the floral couch that had absorbed decades of unspoken tension. My father took his usual seat, the throne from which he issued his commands. My father issued decrees. My mother sat on the edge of the ottoman, wringing her hands. It felt less like a conversation and more like a sentencing. Sarah sat beside her, one hand protectively resting on her small belly, while Mike lingered uncomfortably near the window. "Ethan," my father began in a somber, serious tone. "Your mother and I have been thinking a lot about the future, about this family." He made a broad gesture, as if embracing the very concept of kinship. "Sarah and Mike need a proper start, a real room to build their nest, to welcome our baby." I said nothing, my heart beating faster. I already knew where this was going. Then he continued, leaning forward with a conspiratorial smile. "We've come up with a wonderful solution. A way for you to make a real and meaningful contribution. We're going to have you move into the basement. It's spacious and will give the couple the privacy and space they need in your old room." He said it all with such confidence, like he was announcing I'd won a prize. He wasn't asking. He was informing me of a decision already made. "The basement?" I finally said, the words strange in my mouth. "Dad, that's not a room. It's a concrete box." "Don't be dramatic," he replied, waving his hand dismissively. "Throw down a rug, buy a nice lamp. It'll be cozy, a real bachelor studio." My mother stepped in, her voice soft and pleading. Think of it as your contribution to your new family, to your new nephew, my dear. A sacrifice, yes, but a beautiful one for family. Sacrifice. They were asking me to relocate my entire life, my workspace, my sanctuary, the only place in this house that truly belonged to me, into a damp, underground storage area, and they were calling it a beautiful sacrifice. Later, I went down to see it for myself. I pulled the old metal chain, and a bare 60-watt bulb cast long, distorted shadows across the room. The air was thick with the scent of mold and cold earth. A large water stain crept across the back wall, a ghost map from last winter's flooding. I could see the blurred outlines of where my dad's old weight bench used to be, where my childhood bike had rusted away. I ran my hand along the rough concrete wall. It was cold and slightly damp to the touch. A dead cricket lay curled on the floor near the old boiler, which still groaned and wheezed. It wasn't a bachelor studio. It was a tomb, and they wanted to put me in it. The next day, I tried to talk to them again. I caught them in the kitchen while my mom was making coffee. "Listen," I began, trying to keep my voice calm and reasonable, "I understand you want to help Sarah. I want to help too, but I can't work in the basement. My job requires a stable, safe, and dry environment for thousands of dollars worth of computer equipment. I've got multiple monitors, servers. I need dedicated circuits and wired Ethernet in my room. Wi-Fi doesn't even reach the basement." My father, reading the sports section at the table, didn't even look up. "You'll figure it out. You're the smart one." "It's not about being smart, Dad, it's logistics. My work, the job that pays for this house's internet, relies on that setup." "Oh, Ethan, don't make it so complicated," my mother sighed, turning away from the counter. Her face was a mask of disappointment. "You do everything for yourself. Just think of the baby. Your sister needs this." The 4 words that had governed my life. Sarah needs it. Sarah needed a new bike, so mine was handed down. Sarah needed tutoring, so my funds were cut to pay for hers. Sarah needed, and Ethan provided. Only this time, what she needed was my dignity. That night, I overheard Sarah and Mike talking in the hallway. I was headed to the kitchen for a glass of water and froze at the sound of their hushed voices. "I don't know, Sarah," Mike said, his voice unusually hesitant. "It feels kind of wrong. It's his room, you know. He works there." "Sweetheart, be realistic," Sarah replied, firm and pragmatic. "We need the space. We're having a baby. What are we supposed to do, live in the basement? He's single, he'll figure it out. He's smart, he'll come up with a solution. Don't go soft on this. Our family matters now." He was silent for a moment. Yeah, you're right." Hearing that from him, so clearly, without hesitation, cemented something in me. I wasn't family to them. I was an obstacle, a resource to be used. And my sister, the person who should have had my back, treated me like a nuisance, while my brother-in-law, despite his doubts, was too weak to defend me when it counted. The next day, my phone buzzed. It was my Aunt Carol, my dad's younger sister. The black sheep of the family. She had moved out of state years ago and valued honesty more than appearances. "Heard the news," she said, her voice dry. "Your dad called to tell me about Sarah's baby and the wonderful new accommodations." I just sighed. "Yeah," I said, softening my tone. "Let me tell you this once. You've always been a good kid, a good son, a good brother. But sometimes being too good makes people forget your worth. They start to see your kindness not as a gift, but as a duty. Don't let them erase you." Those words landed on me like a weight, echoing through years of conditioned compliance. Don't let them erase you. That was exactly what they were trying to do. Erase my needs, my space, my contributions until nothing remained but my function. That night, an email arrived, an invitation to the annual Miller family reunion and barbecue. My father caught me near the stairs. "Hey, champ," he said, giving me a pat on the back that landed a little too hard. "At the reunion, I'm going to tell everyone the great news about you and your sister. It's going to be amazing. It'll show the whole family how strong and united we are. That was the point of no return. He was going to turn my humiliation into a public display of his own generosity, use me as a prop in the performance of the benevolent patriarch. A cold, hard decision settled in my chest. It wasn't anger or fire, it was icy clarity. I went to my room and shut the door. I wouldn't argue with him behind closed doors anymore. I wouldn't plead my case. If he wanted to make it public, then my answer would be public, too. I sat at my desk. The soft hum of the computer was a comforting presence. I logged into my online banking. Carefully, I went through month by month, year by year. I took screenshots of every mortgage payment I had contributed to. Screenshots of every utility bill I had covered: electricity, water. I found the $8,000 roof repair invoice in an old email. I pulled up the digital receipts for the car payments I had made. I saved everything in a secure folder on my phone, not out of spite, but for my own peace of mind. It was proof. Proof I wasn't crazy. Proof that my contributions were real. Proof that I had the right to say no. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was preparing. He wanted to make a public announcement? Fine. I'd have a public answer ready. The day of the reunion began bright and suffocatingly cheerful. Our backyard, usually a quiet patch of green, had been transformed into the stage for the perfect family play. The air was thick with the scent of charcoal and freshly cut herbs. Uncles I saw once a year laughed around the grill, sweaty beer bottles in hand under the afternoon sun. Everyone was murmuring about Sarah's early pregnancy, offering unsolicited advice, especially about prenatal vitamins. Sticky, watermelon-stained kids screamed and ran across the lawn. It was a postcard of American family happiness, and I felt like a ghost haunting it. I slipped through the crowd with a cold can of Coke in hand, offering forced smiles and vague replies. I could feel my father's eyes on me from across the yard. He was in his element, surrounded by guests near the brand new grill he'd bought last month, a purchase I strongly suspected had been funded with money I'd given my mother to pay the property taxes. I found a quiet spot under the old oak tree, sipping my drink and watching the show. Sarah played the role of expectant mother perfectly, one hand protectively over her barely there bump, accepting congratulations with a radiant, proud smile. Mike stood beside her, uncomfortable, accepting praise for something that clearly embarrassed him to claim credit for. My mother fluttered from group to group like a social hummingbird, making sure every plate was full and every glass never empty. Then my father tapped a knife against his beer bottle. The sound cut through the cheerful chatter. "Hey, folks, can I have your attention for a moment?" The conversations gradually quieted. Heads turned. It was his moment. He wrapped his arm around my mother and pulled her close. "As you all know, we've got some wonderful news in the Miller family. My daughter Sarah and her husband Mike are going to be parents." Applause and cheers swept through the yard. He let the noise die down, grinning broadly. And in times like these, a family shows its true strength. Shows how we stand together, how we support our own. He scanned the crowd until his eyes landed on mine. He raised the bottle slightly in my direction and said, "I've never been prouder of my son Ethan. To help his sister and Mike get the best possible start, Ethan has generously and selflessly offered his own bed and is moving into the basement." He looked at me like a king awaiting the bow of a loyal subject. That's the kind of man he is. That's the kind of family we are. Let's hear it for Ethan. A few people began to clap, their faces filled with admiration. Sarah was glowing. My mother was wiping her eyes. A strange silence settled inside me. The background noise of the party faded into a muffled hum. It felt like I was watching a movie of my own life. I took a slow, deep breath. "Actually, Dad," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it was clear and steady, echoing through the suddenly quiet backyard. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding." The clapping faltered and stopped. Every head turned toward me. My father's smile froze in place. "I'm not giving up my room," I finished, locking eyes with him. The silence that followed was heavy, absolute. The only sound was the sizzle of burgers on the grill. My father's face, which had been glowing with pride, slowly darkened, the color rising up his neck. "What did you say?" he asked, his voice low and threatening. Sarah stepped forward, her face a mixture of disbelief and anger. "What's your problem? We talked about this, it's just temporary." "My problem, Sarah," I replied, turning toward her, "is that my room is also my office. It's where I do the work that pays my bills." I didn't get to finish the sentence. My father moved faster than I'd seen him in years. He took 3 long strides toward me. Before I could react, his arm swung back. The crack of his open palm against my cheek was sharp, like a branch snapping in two. The impact sent a jolt through my jaw. My head whipped to the side. A collective silence sliced through the crowd. For a moment, the only things that existed were the burning heat on my face and a high-pitched ringing in my ears. I tasted the metallic tang of blood where my teeth had cut the inside of my cheek. My chest tightened, like barbed wire had been wrapped around my lungs. I slowly turned my head back to face him. His chest was heaving, his eyes wild with a fury I had never seen directed at me before. My mother let out a choked sob. I touched my cheek. It was already starting to swell. I looked at my father, the man who had just hit his own son in front of our entire family because I refused to be evicted from my own home. "You hit me," I said, barely audible. Then, louder, my voice shaking, but filled with a cold, clear anger I didn't know I possessed. "You hit me. Over a room." I took a step back, putting space between us. I looked past him, at my mother's horrified face, at Sarah's shocked and suddenly guilty expression, at Mike, who looked like he wanted to disappear entirely, and at the stunned faces of my aunts and uncles. "Let's talk about what I've paid for," I said, my voice now steady. I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking, but my focus was sharp. I held up the screen. This family helps each other. This family supports its own. For the past 2 years, I've paid half the mortgage on this house. Every single month. I swiped the screen. I pay the electric bill. Swipe. I pay for the high-speed internet everyone uses. Swipe. When the roof leaked last winter, it wasn't the insurance company that covered the $8,000 bill, it was me. I looked at my mother. "The car you drove here today, I pay the installments on that too." I lowered the phone, my voice softer but no less intense. "This room isn't a gift you're giving me. It's the one thing in this house I haven't already paid for. So don't you ever speak to me about sacrifice again." The silence was total. My father stood frozen, his face a marbled mixture of red and white. His rage had collapsed into stunned disbelief. My mother was openly crying now, one hand covering her mouth. Sarah looked like she might be sick. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Mike stood behind her, his face pale with shock and something that looked like understanding finally dawning. Aunt Carol was the first to move. She walked straight to me and placed a hand gently on my arm. "Come on, Ethan," she said softly. "Let's go." I nodded, never taking my eyes off my father. I let her lead me away. As I passed my family, through the wreckage of the perfect image they had tried to paint, I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty. Vast and hollow. "Ethan, wait," my mother called, her voice cracking. I didn't stop. I walked through the side gate, got in my car, and shut the door. The sound of it closing was the most final sound I'd ever heard. As I pulled away from the curb, I saw my father standing on the lawn, a broken statue at the center of a ruined celebration. That night, I stayed in a sterile, anonymous hotel room. The AC was too cold, the sheets too stiff, but it was peaceful. For the first time in years, the only needs I had to consider were my own. I didn't answer the flood of frantic calls and messages. Instead, I sat on the edge of the bed. The glow of my laptop lit up my face as I began to systematically dismantle the structure I had built around my family. It wasn't an act of anger, it was an act of consequence, as calm and logical as debugging a line of code. I logged into my bank account. The automatic transfer for the mortgage payment to my father's account was cancelled. I accessed the city's utility portal. Electricity, water, internet, all the services I had been paying for were scheduled for disconnection due to non-payment. I changed the password on my mom's car loan account and canceled the automatic payments. Each click was a silent cut, severing a thread of dependence. When I finished, I blocked all their numbers and turned off my phone. I needed silence. 3 days later, I drove back home. Liam came with me, a steady, quiet presence I was deeply grateful for. I only needed to grab my laptop, my work equipment, and a few clothes. The rest, they could keep. The house was eerily quiet when we arrived. Not a single light was on, even though it was a dark, cloudy afternoon. It felt deserted. My keys still worked in the lock. We stepped into a heavy, dead silence. The air was cold and stagnant. The familiar hum of the refrigerator was gone. We found them in the living room, sitting like ghosts in the gray afternoon light. My father slumped in his chair, looking 10 years older. My mother was on the couch, her face swollen and streaked with tears. They both looked up as I entered, their eyes wide, full of fear and desperation. "Ethan," my mom whispered, standing up, "thank God. The power's been cut. The internet's gone. We got a letter, an urgent notice about the mortgage." "I know," I replied calmly. "I stopped paying. My dad finally moved." "You did this?" His voice was a hollow echo of the threatening authority it used to carry. "You'd let your own family sit in the dark?" "You slapped me in front of everyone," I said, emotionless. "I think we have different definitions of family." That's when my mom broke. The facade of disappointment crumbled, and raw desperation spilled out. "You don't understand," she pleaded, stepping toward me. "We needed that money. We really did." "Needed for what?" I asked, old bitterness without fire. "New golf clubs?" And then the full truth, years of lies, finally unraveled. "For the second mortgage, the one we took out years ago to pay off our credit cards. We've been drowning, Ethan. 4 years. Your money was the only thing keeping us afloat. I didn't know what else to do." She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing uncontrollably. The secret was out. This wasn't just about fairness. It was a rotting foundation of debt and shame they'd hidden from everyone, including me. They hadn't just used me for luxury. They'd used me to survive. And still treated me like a burden. Liam placed a hand on my shoulder, a quiet signal he was ready to start packing my things. As he headed upstairs, Sarah appeared in the hallway, Mike close behind. She looked awful. Pale face, red eyes. The usual confident smile was gone, replaced by a deep, hollow ache. Mike looked even worse, if that were possible. She stopped me before I could follow Liam. She didn't look at our parents. She only looked at me. "Ethan," she said, voice barely above a whisper, "I'm sorry." I waited silently. "When Dad slapped you and you said all that about the bills," she shook her head, struggling for words. "I never knew. I thought Dad was handling it." Mike stepped forward, voice trembling. "I tried to tell him it wasn't right to take your room, but He looked at his hands. "I was too afraid to speak up. I'm about to become a father and I couldn't even stand up for what was right." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I was so jealous of you, Ethan. You have a great job. Your life's together. And I'm pregnant and scared, and Mike can't find work, and I just went along with it. It was easier than admitting we were failing. I'm sorry." It was the most sincere thing I'd ever heard from her. In that moment, she wasn't the golden child. She was just a frightened woman finally facing the truth about herself. My parents tried a different tactic, begging me to turn the power back on so we could talk. My father even offered a deal. I could keep my room if I resumed the payments. I shook my head. I walked to the coffee table and set down a business card. "This is a non-profit credit counselor," I told them. "They can help consolidate your debts and build a realistic budget. This is the first step." Then I looked at Sarah and Mike. This is your wake-up call, I said, firm, but not cruel. Your child doesn't need you to be successful. They need you to be responsible adults. Get up. Stop letting them treat you like children. And stop using me as your bank. You have your own family to provide for now. I turned and went upstairs with Liam to pack up the rest of my life out of that house. The following weeks were a whirlwind of apartment hunting and rebuilding. I found a small one-bedroom downtown with big windows and a view of the city. It was mine, every inch of it. The silence was profound. It was the sound of peace. Aunt Carol became my anchor. She called every few days, not to talk, just to check in. She told me my parents had finally called the credit counselor. They had to sell the house, my childhood home, and move into a small rental on the other side of town. The facade had finally collapsed. About a month after I moved, I got a text from an unknown number. It was Sarah. Mike had gotten a job at a warehouse, hard work, but stable. She was working part-time at a clinic. They would have a place to live before the baby was born. Thank you for the wake-up call. I stared at the message for a long time. I replied only, "You're welcome. Good luck." It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. A new foundation built on the rubble of the old one. Sometimes I stand at my new window, watching the city lights, and I think about them. I don't feel anger anymore. Not even triumph. Mostly, I feel a quiet sadness for the family I thought I had. And a deep, lasting gratitude for the peace I fought to find. I didn't destroy my family. I just stopped setting myself on fire to keep them warm. They had to learn how to find their own light. It's incredible how clearly you see your own worth once you stop paying for others to ignore it. Have you ever had to choose between your family and your self-respect? What would you have done?
Reddit Relics comment. This story is a powerful reminder that while family is important, our self-love and self-respect should never be sacrificed. Sometimes, setting boundaries and protecting our emotional health means making difficult decisions. The protagonist didn't destroy his family, he simply stopped burning himself out to keep it together. It's painful, but also an act of courage and self-worth. What about you? Have you ever had to choose between staying in a toxic family dynamic or protecting your own well-being? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And that's the end of another emotional Reddit story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave a like, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing stories. Don't miss the next one.